Hello, William. David Trongale here. Thank you so much for sending your swing over. So, what I'm going to do in this lesson is talk about how to work on shallowing the club in transition and explain a few things that I'm observing in your swing that, given what you're currently doing, would make the shallowing move very difficult. And I'll be referencing Ben Hogan, as I'm glad we're on the same page that there's no doubt he had some of the best, if not the greatest, fundamentals of all time. So, and then I'll wrap this up with a drill for you to do. So this lesson will be thorough. A very quick disclaimer before I get started here. What's really important is when you're working on the range like this, which I always admire, is I'm going to talk about more than two things in this lesson, but anytime you're standing over a golf ball and trying to make changes, if you're thinking or working on more than one or two things, you're going to be in trouble. You can't have four swing thoughts at once, even though I might point out, four different things here. So the idea will be to work on one thing at a time. So let's start off here. So why is it so difficult for you to shallow? Well, I want to start off with the takeaway. So if we take a look here, on the way back, this is what I would call a flat takeaway, meaning you're going underneath the plane. Now, it's not super flat, but, there's no doubt this club head is continually underneath the red line. So when you take the club back flat, I'm just going to mark where it is at left arm parallel roughly. You can see it's horizontal relative to the red plane line. When it goes back flat, we tend to be a little bit steep on the way down. Now, in your case, it's not too bad. I mean, if you look at where you are, right about, between here and here, there's a little bit of shallowing already going on. So I can see you must have some nice natural ability because that club head is kicking back. But this movement will be a lot easier if we can actually make your takeaway more vertical, because that will set you up to shallow a little bit more naturally. So ideally, when your left arm is parallel, I would like to see the club, it doesn't have to be perpendicular to the ground, but we really want to get that club, matching that red line. If not, I think for your average person, a little bit vertical of it to set you up for the shallowing. The other thing I would really like to point out here is your head is backing up and lifting substantially, which is contributing to the inability to shallow. Why is this the case? Well, one thing that goes in conjunction with a flat takeaway is a relatively flat shoulder turn. So if we can get you turning on a steeper axis and having your head stay down without backing up, which again, I'll consolidate this into one drill so it's not overly complicated, that automatically should help with that takeaway. Another reason why people tend to take the club underneath the plane is they're simply rotating their forearms. So if you were to just rehearse in slow motion a takeaway where you felt like your arms were frozen and did not rotate, this club would be, again, more vertical going back. And when it's more vertical going back, it's easier to shallow on the way down. Right now, you're kind of going from flat to a little bit steep here. So right here, this is a little bit steep. And then again, I can tell you have some nice natural athletic ability because you're getting a little bit shallower on the way down. And it looks like this ball flew pretty nice. But again, the whole idea here is to optimize and get better. So let's take a peek at what Ben Hogan is doing. If we go over to Hogan's swing, we can see the difference as to what I'm talking about. All right, William, so we're looking at Ben Hogan now. with the similar red plane line, yellow line in the head, back of the hips. So Hogan was a bit unique in the sense that he had a tremendous amount of flexibility. So his takeaway at the very early stages of this particular shot, yeah, it does go underneath the plane line a little bit, but when we get to that position I referred to earlier, left arm parallel, we call that P3. So somewhere right about here, to me, that looks just a hair vertical of the red line. And remember, your club was more or less aimed that way. So Hogan is not most people, and this is where I would, say, sure, we want to emulate Hogan, but not copy everything to the exact detail, because everyone has a different body type and build. I mean, I don't have Hogan's flexibility. So what I would recommend is getting your club even a little bit more vertical of where he's at. We don't want it so it's, out here or anything radical, but I would say getting it so it's vertical of the red plane line will, again, set you up to shallow a little bit more naturally. So these other details to talk about that I mentioned, I mean, he's definitely tilting on a steeper axis than you are. Notice how his head went back, his head did not back up. His head went down, and it's staying out over the ball. So he is gaining depth here at the hips. He's deepening and going farther into his posture. And that's going to help set him up to make that move. Now, there's some other stuff going on. So one thing that's kind of unique is for a guy who shallows this much in transition, and here's that magic move that you're probably, looking for. Most people who make this move, the club is aimed, straight down towards the target line. Some people are a little bit crossed. I don't like to teach a golf swing where you're ever across the line at the top. But, Hogan went from being, we'll call this, if anything, a little bit on the laid off side. And if you study footage of him, it will vary from video to video. But he went from laid off to even more laid off. And this just takes an amazing amount of flexibility. So again, getting the club feeling like it's more crossed, or at least, down the target line will make this easier. So the depth of the hips, the head, all this stuff, I can't ignore the fact that this movement will become more natural as you increase your hip rotation. So his hips are going to be a lot more open here at impact than yours are if you go back and rewind the tape. What else is contributing to the shallowing move? Well, there's some external rotation going on in his right shoulder, in that joint there. So if you imagine, the analogy I like to give people is if imagine you're skipping a stone, like a sidearm throwing motion. You're skipping a stone across water. So his right elbow is really squeezing in front of the body. So this action of externally rotating and supinating the right forearm as the left forearm pronates, that's another factor that's getting this thing really, really flat. So he's flattening that shaft out a ton right here. And then it's hard. I know this is, from the 1950s, so this footage is not perfect, but then he actually will steepen it a bit later. So he went from here to getting a little bit steeper at the very later stages, which will allow him to exit around the plane. All right, so I'm throwing a lot of information at you, but again, I would strongly encourage you watch this video more than once. And let's go to this drill here. So again, like I said, you cannot stand over a golf ball and have 5 different swing thoughts or 4 swing thoughts. You got to work on one thing at a time. So what I would say is if there's one thing to work on, there's a drill you can do at home. I'm going to show you footage of it. And it involves a wall. It's going to help you make a steeper shoulder turn. It's going to help your head from staying down and not lifting. And again, when you tilt on a steeper axis, automatically that gets the club in a little bit more of a vertical position going back. So again, even if you forget the idea, his arms here are not rotating, and that's why the club, well, they rotate a little bit, but when someone whips the club underneath the plane, they're rolling their forearms over. So he's going to try and delay the forearm rotation. But let's not worry about that. Let's just go to the drill here and stick with this one drill. And I'll show you how this will help. All right, so this is the drill I would recommend. If you're going to do one drill and then just go out and hit some shots without over-analyzing, this is what I would recommend. So this is me, and this drill has helped me. So I have my head parked against a wall, and you can do this at home indoors. I have the lines on the head and the back of the hips here to kind of show you what I'm trying to accomplish. So what I'm really doing is exaggerating a steep shoulder turn where my head goes down, and then simultaneously on the forward swing, the head is not backing up. In fact, the head went down even more. Now, nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. I mean, we all have body limitations, but when you actually hit a shot, your head's not going to go down this much. What I'm trying to do is just get you to, at minimum, stop it from lifting and backing way up like it currently is. So, golf is a game of exaggeration. You're trying to make a change. Making changes are difficult, so we have to practice the opposite. And then when you go to the actual footage, you'll probably land somewhere in that happy medium range. So, again, the idea here is we're keeping our hips deep, making a steep turn. And by doing that, even though I talked about pronation and supination and the forearms and the plane, by creating tilt here, automatically that will make your backswing more vertical. And to preface this, or to summarize, getting more vertical on the way back will help you shallow out on the way down. So we need to reverse the conditions that you're currently doing, even though overall I think you have a pretty nice golf swing, better than most. So I would really just get indoors and work on this drill. Now, check this out. I'm going to implement Cameron Champ. You can see it's not just Hogan. Watch his head go down. And now this is actually, I think, a little bit easier. So his club is pointed straight down towards the target line, and then boom, there's that move, right? Check out that shallowing action here. Big time shallowing movement. Let me clear all these lines out. So he's got a lot of shoulder tilt. Club is aiming down where the flagstick would be. And then boom, notable shallowing move on the way down. His head is substantially lower, and it's not backing up. All right, so a lot of information there, but this is the number one drill I would recommend doing. And I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, I repeat myself at times, but watch it more than once. Work on this drill, and keep me posted with how things go. Thank you so much.